Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you wherever you are. Thank you for joining us for our last keynote session of PELTA's 10th International English Language Teaching Conference. I'm Michelle, the moderator for this session, and I'm glad to welcome all of you. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Gabriela Kleckova, TESOL International Association President for 2021-2022. She is also the chair of the Department of English at the Faculty of Education, University of West Bohemia in Pleasant, the Czech Republic. She is a university professor, language teacher, teacher trainer, researcher, consultant, and materials developer. She started her professional career as a lower secondary school English teacher after receiving a master's degree in education in the teaching of English as a foreign language in the Czech Republic. She received her MA and PhD in English with a focus on applied linguistics from the University of Memphis, Tennessee, USA. She has taught a wide range of general English courses and ESOL professional courses for pre-service and in-service teachers of various cultural and language backgrounds. Her research interests include the effectiveness and utility of visual design of ELT materials, teacher education, innovation in education, and leadership. For TESOL's 50th anniversary, she was named one of 30 emerging leaders shaping the future of the profession. Today, she will talk about something that she's passionate about, which is collaboration. Dr. Kleckova will share how collaboration is not only an essential skill of the 21st century, but also a pillar of teacher professionalism, can develop effective and respectful partnerships that will lead to better success in our language classrooms. Before I hand over the session to Dr. Kleckova, I'd like to remind everybody watching that you can ask questions or send your comments in via the chat box on whichever platform that you're watching this on. So let's get ready to be inspired by Dr. Kleckova's incredible ideas. Over to you, Dr. Kleckova. Everyone, enjoy the presentation.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from the heart of Europe, the Czech Republic. It's a big honor for me to be here today and to speak on behalf of TESOL International Association, the largest global association of language teaching professionals. But today we will not talk about TESOL. We'll talk about something that's part of TESOL, and it's part of our professional collaboration. But before we get to my talk, I want to thank the organizers of the conference for hosting this amazing online event. Yet another great online event for the professional community that we are all part of. And big thank you. I know how much work it is to put together an event. It's not that different from the face-to-face. There are all these challenges we have to overcome when we want to organize something for our professional community. So big thank you to the leadership team of Pelta in organizing this, and all the other speakers that spend their time preparing and sharing their ideas with everybody. And of course, you being here with us, me today, to be learning more about what you can do in your professional career to improve the instruction and have even bigger impact on language learners that you interact and work with. So let's get to my talk. I'll probably take about 30 minutes, and as Michelle said, there'll be time for questions. And I'll talk about collaboration, something that I learned through TESOL, but maybe it's shifting my attention now to something that's relevant more to language teaching and the actual school context, no matter whether it's primary or a middle or secondary school or even university. Many of us, let's see, it doesn't matter where we are in the world, but one thing that we have in common, many of us, is that we are there by ourselves with our students. Once the door closes to our classrooms, we're there by ourselves. And we tend to stick to ourselves when it comes to our performance. Very often we work in isolation by ourselves, and we work independently very often. But one thing that we all share is this, that we all love English language learners. And our desire is to make sure that what we perform or what we do and the conditions we create in the classroom leads to them learning English or learning something else along with English competencies that they need for the 21st century. We also have in common is that we very often don't have enough time and enough resources. So what I've learned in the last year and actually 20 years as that I've been a member of TESOL, it doesn't matter where you're in the world, we do have certain things. And I like to look at what we have in common, our commonalities. And this is what it's common. Maybe nowadays it's not the classroom, maybe it's the room, it's the room which you broadcast from, and you're still there by yourself. Maybe your pets are running around, maybe your kids are running around, but you are there by yourself when it gets to teaching. And today I want to talk about how we can change this to a certain extent so somebody looks at what happens in the classroom with us. And I'll be using a metaphor of cooking along the way, something that I like doing. And so like many times when we cook, we're there by ourselves in the kitchen with all the things that we put together. So keep that metaphor in mind as we dive into the talk. But what we also do together and what is common for us is that we all learn. And we like to learn. And being here at this event is another example of us learning. We go to conferences, we attend workshops, webinars, we read, we listen to podcasts, watch webinars on YouTube. We follow experts on social media. We go back to school and get advanced degrees. We do all these things to kind of grow and learn. But it's an interesting thing that we do all these things, but do they really have impact on what happens in the classroom? And Peter Cole says in his piece, Professional Development, a Great Way to Avoid Change, that we feel like we're learning, but not much happens in between workshops. And I have a question for you. How do we actually change and improve what we do in our classrooms? I'm sure very often, and even after this event, you're going to go back to your students and you're going to take a couple of ideas and try to throw them in. And that's it. Maybe you do more, but that's what I used to do. And I still sometimes do. It's like, oh, that's a great idea. Let me do it. Oh, I like that activity. Oh, my students will love it. And I'll take it. This is one element that I take in. And it's almost like when you're cooking and you're in a kitchen and you watch a video about a cooking show. And you're like, oh, that's a great idea. I'll do that. And then after the show is over, you remember one thing and you take it and you make it. And maybe then you forget. if you don't do it right away, you forget. And maybe I remember many times I see something on TV, I make it, I cook it, and then I don't cook it again, and I forget about it. And I very often, and maybe again, it's just me, but I feel like we do forget, and we take back something, and then it kind of dissolves in what we do in our day-to-day teachings. And so that's what I kind of think about when I think of conferences. And they're great, but one thing that they definitely do, and we take back, is the energy, is the feel of the community that we're a part of. Knowing that there are colleagues who experience the same things, who worry about the same things, who have the same joys. The energy that we all get from getting together, either online and face to face, is amazing. And that's like that energy that keeps us going for another year, for another 3 months. And I think that's really important as well. But when we talk about innovation and change in the classroom, it's maybe not as dominant or obvious after a conference or a workshop as it is maybe through other means. And Fullant, in his book, The New Meaning of Educational Change, says that the best professional learning, the one that has impact on teacher performance, is tied to focused collaborative cultures. So those things are important, and they are part of our professional life. But do they really truly impact and our instruction in a way where we constantly evolve what we do and improve it in order to serve our learners better? And I think basically that professional development depends on effective teacher collaboration. That if you only do those webinars and conferences and YouTube videos, that's not enough. And so let's see how you do in collaboration. I have a little, we're going to do a little independent, I don't have an online poll, but we'll do this independently. How much do you collaborate with your colleagues? And maybe more specifically, how much do you learn from and with your colleagues? Okay, how much do you learn from and with your colleagues in your context? Where do you stand? If you try to answer yourself. And the question is talking to your colleagues about what happened in the class learning, or is it just sharing? Okay. So maybe you're right there, and collaboration is an integral part of your professional life. You cannot live without it, and it's an integral element in your school, in your context where you are. Or maybe you do collaborate here and there when asked, but do not have established ways to seek understanding about the nature of learning with your colleagues. Or maybe you've had a bad experience and you prefer to do your own stuff. You like your independence, autonomy, don't get into my classroom, don't look at my instruction, I'm there, I'm doing it, I know what I'm doing, I'm a professional. We all have our own context and needs and do our best to perform well. And I understand that, and maybe as it's depending on the culture, collaboration may or may not be a big element in your culture. In Finland, when I was in Finland visiting schools, it's like the thing for teachers and students. Collaboration is highlighted and stressed among the professional community of educators and students learn it. In the Czech Republic, it's not so. It's very different. And thank you for sharing. I see you're sharing your experience and things in the chat. And thank you for doing that. So we know, and the OECD Teaching and Learning International Survey says that collaboration is one of the 5 pillars of teaching professionalism. The 6 principles published by TESOL International Association also stress collaboration. It's in the 6th principle, where we engage and collaborate with a community of practice. And maybe just to say what collaboration is, it's not planning a school trip or excursion. That's working with people. And what I mean by collaboration in the educational context is where 2 or more teachers are in a relationship in which they interact in order to improve students' learning, where the interaction and exchange of ideas and a reflection on teaching practices improve students' learning. I'm going to continue here. It's early in the morning. I'm having a hard time to kind of focus, but I'm going to go back to my notes, that the literature shows a small but growing body of evidence that suggests that there is a positive relationship between teacher collaboration and student achievement. When teachers learn and grow, everyone in the school benefits from it. But the way we learn and grow varies, and it's very individual. But we know that if we do those things and we collaborate, it impacts our teaching. The research shows that that frequent collaboration is associated with the use of innovative teaching and higher levels teacher self-efficacy and job satisfaction. Okay, so we know that collaboration impacts our instruction, and what we mean by collaboration is talking and sharing and interacting in order to improve students' learning. And there are different ways how we can do it. Depending on the context, there are different formats, from professional learning communities to collaborative planning or co-planning. There's a lesson study. You can do peer-to-peer observations. You can have professional growth partners. You can do joint activities across different classes and age groups. You can exchange teaching materials with colleagues, and you can discuss learning development of specific students. So there are different forms of collaboration, and what I like is that De Jong and other in their article, School-Based Teacher Collaboration, kind of categorize this, and they talk about 4 different categories of types of collaboration. I'm sure you'll be able to relate to this, so let's go over them. This is something that we all are very well familiar with, is storytelling and scanning for ideas. Is the occasional exchange of experiences among colleagues. Over lunch, in the hallway, we just talk about what happened to us and we listen to others. You're in the teacher's room and you scan for ideas what you could do tomorrow, right? And this is going back to my metaphor with cooking. It's like people talk about what they've cooked, right? And maybe you collect ideas. It doesn't mean that you're going to cook it, but you listen to it and you think, wow, that's interesting. What we also do in the second level of collaboration is we help and assist our colleagues. We share ideas and give each other advice. Mostly this often happens on specific teaching situations. Can you tell me what I should do? I don't know what happened there. That student is not performing well, or how do you do this? So again, this is something that we frequently do. And it's us stepping outside our comfort zone and asking those questions. And similarly, going back to my cooking metaphor, is how do you do this? How do you make this? How do you prepare? Can you tell me? Or this happened to me. Do you know why that happened? We do that very frequently, at least. We're going to do a survey in a minute. The third level is sharing methods and materials. And often that's related to the curriculum and instruction. Also happens, again, now people do this online. We have, especially during the pandemic, a lot of sharing of methods and materials happened over the internet. Going back to the cooking metaphor, we often share how we do something. Maybe we should share some tools that we use in the kitchen. We give some tips for people what they could buy. We do those things. And the last level is joint work. And that's a little different, because in joint work there's a high level of interdependence between the people involved in this. And what it leads to is a collective responsibility for the work of teaching. It's the deepest and the highest level of the collaboration when both of us get into the process and talk about it. And it's almost like if you had somebody being there in the kitchen with you when you cook with somebody. Sometimes it happens, 2 people in the kitchen, 3 people in the kitchen. When you get 3 or 4 people in the kitchen, that maybe it's not good. But when there are 2 people in the kitchen, you start observing each other. You start looking at how they do things. You go like, I didn't know you can chop the onion like this. Or, let me think about this. And you together work on that meal, and you feel a collective responsibility for the outcome. And that's the 4th level. So let's do a little, and what we know is that the intensity can have different impact on learning for teachers, and depends on the context. But we need to create certain conditions for the collaboration to impact the classes. But let's get to where you stand. I'm using these adverbs of frequency we all know from language textbooks, And if you can self-assess, how do you rank on these when it gets to storytelling and scanning for ideas with your colleagues? Never, rarely, sometimes, often, usually. It can be tied to your personality, introverts, extroverts. I myself sometimes actually don't talk much about my teaching, but I sometimes do tell stories and look for ideas. How much do you help and give advice and get advice on specific teaching situations from your colleagues? Again, for me, sometimes. How much or how often do you share methods and materials with your colleagues that are related to the curriculum? Now, this is happening more and more in my life, in my professional life, in my department. But I still think it's sometimes more than often. When it gets to the deepest level, the joint work, where you build a collective responsibility for the work of teaching. How often do you do this? And for me, that's rarely, and even never. I very occasionally I have somebody to come to my class and give me feedback when I give workshops with a colleague. Then yes, but when it gets to my day-to-day teaching, not very often. I am there by myself and I reflect on what happens. I don't get any other insights. Okay. So we have those 4 levels in a very simple way, kind of organize the different ways we can collaborate or we interact with our colleagues. And Katrin Vandergen and her colleagues in their article in 215 talk about the different levels of collaboration. And they say that they can be diverse and can show different paths. But and they range from superficial to deep level collaboration. But the research shows that educators, we tend to restrict collaboration to focus on practical affairs. We often consult with colleagues, but it is often restricted to discussing ideas and materials, planning teaching activities, and very often the nature and content of testing, and the pace and content of teaching. How far are we moving through the curriculum? Are we getting behind or are we there? And very often these exchanges are aimed directly at immediate student learning and support. But the research shows that it's rare that we discuss the different aspects of didactics of teaching and problems we meet in our daily practice. It's rare that we observe each other in our classrooms, and it's rare that we critically examine our actual performance. And it's rare that we jointly teach in teams and observe each other and provide feedback. It's rare that we learn with and from each other. Critical reflection on and discussion of teaching practice seems to be rare. That's the reality. You may be where the reality is. You may be doing better when it gets to collaboration, or you may, until now, you may have never thought about the impact of collaboration on your actual teaching. As I said, we tend to restrict collaboration to more safe and less threatening aspects because that's important to us. We try to avoid conflict and very often preserve our norms of privacy and autonomy in the classroom. And that this may be caused by the culture of in teaching. There's a long-standing culture of isolation and individualism, and we tend to preserve that individuality. Individual autonomy. But we know from research that if we have frequent and regular engagement in deeper forms of collaboration, it impacts instructional process in the classroom. Because when it's that deeper level, where it's that cooking together, when it's that somebody being there in the class looking at your teaching, or somebody planning with you, or somebody reflecting with you on your actual teaching, when the collaboration is deep enough, it touches our underlying beliefs. And if it touches underlying beliefs, we start thinking about what we do, and it starts changing our perception of what we do. And that leads to actual school change and improvement. as I said, maybe it's like in that cooking. You go, wow, I didn't know you do this in this order, and it's actually better. I never. I grew up in this. This is what my mom used to do. I do this, but I didn't think about changing it. Wow. By being there with somebody doing it, looking at it closely, reflecting on it, impacts the continuing action that we take in the classes. And the data show that students, if we conduct the deep collaboration, students are reported to improve understanding and performance, but even more teachers report to be more motivated, experience decreased workload. As I said earlier, we have in common not enough time, not enough resources. Maybe this is one way to address that challenge. It increases communication in schools. It improves our overall skills, technological skills, and reduces personal isolation that we very often experience in the school setting. And it leads to our instruction maybe being more student-centered and overall supports students. So, but one thing we need to keep in mind is that collaboration is hard work. And I kind of dissected the word collaborate, comes from Latin, and it's with, and indicates with addition. So there's somebody with us, and the other work is labor, which is work. And work is an activity involving effort. So there's in deep collaboration, there's effort, it's hard work, and there's somebody involved in the process. And as Andy Hargreaves says, in teaching as elsewhere, if we want a return, we have to make an investment. It doesn't come easily to us, those deeper levels of collaboration. It's not that little chat over lunch, because it requires us to find time in our busy schedule to meet with that colleague and discuss a lesson plan. Or it requires time in our schedule to say, hey, I'm available this period. I'm going to go and observe your class, and let's talk about what you've done. And then you're going to come and see my class. It requires time for a group of teachers to get together and closely look at students' products or works and kind of discuss what's going on in the classroom, how much learning is happening or not happening, what is needed to be changed and improved and innovated for students to learn more. Those are challenges, and it doesn't come, as I said, as easily to us as other things, as helping and giving advice. Teachers are the people who like to give advice and help, and we do that with our colleagues. But going out there and saying, and the things that we have for ourselves, to ourselves, which is the actual instruction, being in the classroom by ourselves and opening it up to our colleagues, it's kind of threatening as well. Okay, we don't know. I mean, nobody has looked at us for so many years. Maybe somebody will come and say horrible things to us. But once we open up and we build and develop the skills of collaboration, which is something we need to keep in mind, it doesn't come. It is also a skill that requires some practice and experiences. And how you provide constructive, positive feedback to a colleague, it's a skill. It's not easy. How you focus on the positives, and you find one thing that might maybe be challenged. How you become the growth partner to your colleagues is a skill, but it's something that can be developed and we can learn. And as I said in my, I think, abstract, is we very often encourage collaboration with our learners. When it gets to us, we stay away. We teach our learners to collaborate. Maybe we can teach ourselves to collaborate. So I have a thing for you before we close here. Based on what I've said, is what is the one specific thing or step you could do or take in your context that could lead to critical reflection and discussion of your teaching practice in collaboration with your colleagues? And I want to stress the critical reflection discussion of your teaching practice with your colleagues. Can you think of one particular step or thing that you could do to critically reflect on your teaching? Because if that happens, that can have impact on students' performance and you as a professional. Maybe it's a challenging question at this time, at the end of the conference. Maybe it's a question you may want to copy down and think about as you go back to your students and your schools or language programs. What can we do here to critically reflect? Thank you. Video record my lesson and share it with colleagues for comments. This is a great idea. That's one way. Another way of have that critical reflection discussion of our own teaching is recording it. It's not like being there and watching the students, but definitely a great way to involve our colleagues in our teaching. Thank you for that tip, Thomas. So I'm going to conclude with 3 quotes. We know that if teachers collaborate, all parties involved in education benefit. And that's a quote from Katrin Bergergen again in her article from 2015. Andy Hargreaves, in his 2019 article about teacher collaboration, says it's important now, therefore, not just that teachers collaborate, but that they collaborate well, and that school and system leaders enable and empower them to do that. And maybe here, even today in the audience, you may have leaders and heads of departments. This is something you may want to encourage among your teachers, the people you work with. And a quote from a teacher about collaboration is, when we work together, we create a better learning experience. Teacher collaboration positively impacts student achievement and allows us, educators, to explore new territory. And this is by Sabrina Gates, a certified teacher. So I'd like to conclude this talk by saying, let's venture and explore new territories of collaboration that we haven't explored yet. Let's dive in and let's open our arms to examine our practices deeply in collaboration with others. Let's learn with and from each other to improve and innovate on instruction and improve the language learning outcomes of our learners. Thank you for listening. And Michelle, I think it's time for questions now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kleckova. Thank you for being us so early in the morning and still able to inspire us and make us think deeper about how we can collaborate with each other better to drive better results. So it's now time for Q&A. So participants, please feel free to drop your questions into the chat box. We'll just wait for a few moments for the questions to come in.
Before they come in, I'm reading the chat. Of course, recording. I think recording can be a challenge in certain schools. Having people come in is maybe easier. Team teaching, co-teaching is great. I think 2 people in the kitchen, it's easier to coordinate than 3 or 4 people. So team teaching, but if we think of co-teaching being there 2, 3 is a bigger challenge. I think you really have to plan deeply, but 2 is definitely a great opportunity. And Michelle, you want to share a question?
Yeah, sometimes too many cook will spoil the broth, yeah. Okay, so here's a question from Kwet Tian Wei. She asks, what skills and resources do principals, administrators, teachers, and teacher leaders need to be equipped with to help teachers learn, develop, and work together?
Well, how much time do we have, Michelle?
We don't we still have about 10 minutes,
yeah, so
but we would like to reserve some time for other questions as well.
Right. So we can't answer that one, and it's such a big question, and I'm sure it's even the answer wouldn't fit in one book. But I think the important thing is to know that collaboration is important, and it's something, if you want to introduce, it's gonna maybe be challenging. I work with principals on encouraging collaboration and professional learning communities within schools, and there are some obstacles, and not everybody's willing to join in. So I think the principal, or being the leader, if it's something you want to do, it has to be done on a volunteer base, and the teachers want to be motivated. So by being the example yourself and opening up, I think is a really good start. And of course, as I talk about the different skills the teachers need, that's one area. But there are also processes. As I said, you do need to set a time apart as a boss. Like, when are you going to do it? Okay, if you want teachers to collaborate. So there's a number of things, and I would encourage you to do some research online and find some tips for professional learning communities and co-teaching, reflective practices, the other ways to learn. And I'm sure within the community of the association, there might be some resources and experiences that your colleagues have in the association that would be worth to explore. But there's so much in it. But the initial thing is, if you want to do it, you do it, and you know that's going to impact, and you have to be an example yourself. So opening up the classroom, if you're in the classroom, opening it up and showing the value of it, being the model and the example that if we do that, like in the class, if we model and we're the example how we do a certain activity, students are more likely to join in. So basic, start with yourself.
Right, good advice there. Thank you very much. So the next question is from Shalini. How can we encourage teachers within a school to develop and agree upon a shared vision and mutual goals?
Great question. Challenge many people struggle, face if they want to do this. And we have to realize that not everybody is going to be aligned with what we want to do as leaders. And there's always going to be some people. I would encourage you to read some of the work by Michael Fullan on changing education. It's very inspirational. I think his book is in the 5th edition or 7th, but there are great insights into how we innovate and how empowerment is important, a part of this. But also understanding that not all are going to go along, and then there's going to be always a certain number of teachers that like to innovate, and then some teachers that are kind of mediocre in the middle, and there are some teachers who always ignore any innovation. But do look at Michael Fullan's work. Lots of great ideas by understanding into how innovation happens. He often talks about systems, and but I think many of the ideas are applicable to local contexts like schools or programs as well.
Right, great. Thank you very much. Do we have more questions? Right, next one is from Ho Jia Ying. She's saying, is that you jumping on the track, doctor? Okay, right. My students currently have this cultural exchange with Korean students, but I do realize there's a big gap in the language proficiency. Should we continue? So she's asking for your advice.
Okay, jumping on the track. I'm not that skillful to take a selfie. No, it's not me jumping on the track. But it's a picture taken from Pixabay that allows that has copyright-free images. But I mean, you always have to find a balance, right? The energy and time and investment goes into it, and the outcome for the learners. So I'll be talking on Tuesday to a group of students in Honduras, and I say the talk is there's not one right answer in our profession. The answer is always it depends. So you have to assess the value, the investment on your part, and the outcomes and the impact it has. More obstacles, and I think in our profession we have so much to worry about that we should seek things that are in balance, or that for less work we get more outcomes. So I think you have to preserve yourself and not to lose yourself and your time and energy over something that has very little impact on students' learning. So that would be my well-being advice to you. But great that you established that kind of collaboration or cultural exchange.
Right, great. Thank you. Do we have another question coming in? Yeah, I think it's really challenging when we want to try something different. I think, like you have mentioned just now in your talk, that we have always been doing this thing alone, and now we want to kind of like do something different. But I guess if it's a different result that we want to get, we have to try doing it differently.
And like
Right.
with anything, Michelle, if the more we do it, the easier it gets, right? The first time you have somebody to come and sit on your class, ooh, okay, you're nervous, but then maybe in 10 minutes you forget. And then you go like, yeah, come over. I mean, then you leave your door open and you say, yeah, come over. Let me know, what do you think? Can you observe my students and tell me how they respond to my instructions? And even you yourself recording, if possible, as the table is a video, and watching yourself, that's the scariest moment, right? It's the biggest thrill you want to see is you record your class and watch it. Make sure you feel comfortable, and then you watch yourself. That's a thriller, but also a great way to kind of reflect on your teaching practice. Maybe you want to start there, where nobody comes in. It's just you and you.
Yep, yep. I truly agree with you. I think I personally have also experienced trying to encourage my team to collaborate, and like most teachers, they were not happy with the idea, and they felt that another person is stepping into their so-called comfort zone or their safety net or a space where they are so confident of. And then here you are, you have another person coming in and saying things about their class. So they were quite reluctant. But after doing it, they actually told me that that was actually the best thing that happened, because they found that they were able to generate more ideas, better ways of doing certain learning activities, and indeed, the students have better results. Okay, we have another question here from Kamlek One. In what ways can technology support the goals of teacher collaboration?
Depends what technology, right? We just shared that recording maybe and doing, sharing parts of your lesson rather than not the whole lesson is one way. I think technology allows us uh, to do things not always synchronously, asynchronously, but when it gets to collaboration, discussing our teaching, I think it should be done more synchronously. Maybe it allows us to connect, in the later hours of the day. Of course, lesson planning and having, sharing your lesson plan and having somebody read it online, in Google Docs and giving feedback or asking the questions that is not clear without you commenting on the lesson plan. That's one thing. But I think the talking and the interaction, either through Zoom or in person, is important, and the negotiation and technology is a great thing. And like in the classroom, if you need something to help you in the collaboration, then use technology. But I would look at it as a tool in what we want to achieve in collaboration, rather than necessarily always think of technology. But I the school where I sometimes work is that we get together, we sit in a circle, we look at examples of videos, we look at lesson plans, we look at students' products and writings, and we discuss those and what it says about their learning. And I find that sharing and listening to others about something and hearing those views, you always reflect on yourself. And I think when we go and observe a colleague, we look at the colleague, but the whole time we actually think about ourselves, how we would do this and how we would respond and how we would handle this. So we constantly reflect on our own doings, and the impact is amazing. You go back and you have the deeper processing of your own practices, and then you give them feedback. But the whole lesson, the observation is not about them, it's about us, watching somebody else doing the job and us thinking about what we do.
Indeed. I can't agree with you more on that. Yeah, seriously, that's why I have been telling my colleagues sometimes when you go for observation or when I observe your class, it's not that I want to criticize you. I'm actually learning a lot of things from your class as well. So yes, I truly agree. Like observation, whether it's recorded or in person, it can definitely help us to be better teachers.
I
So we
like
have
Michelle.
Sean here.
I like how criticizing is global, right? Like I kind of thought that's us because we are so critical in my culture, but I'm happy to hear that it's, around the world it's the same. You go
I
in and
think
you
it's
see everything you
universal.
criticize.
Yes, that's right. It's really normal. Right. So thank you very much. Yeah. Really appreciate your time with us. Waking up so early in the morning and being here with us. You have certainly inspired us to rethink how we could collaborate more effectively so that we can form more respectful partnerships that lead to greater success in our language classrooms. So thank you to the audience for participating in this session. It's been a wonderful time with all of you. We've come to almost the end of the conference. The next session is the closing ceremony at 3 p.m. Malaysia time. So do stay on and join us. Yeah. Thank you once again, Dr. Kleckova. Have a good
Thank you,
day.
Michelle.
I'll see you once again.
It was a
Bye.
big honor. Thank you. Bye bye.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the closing ceremony of the 10th International English Language Teaching Conference, organized and hosted by PELTA. Ladies and gentlemen, ICON 2021, our first virtual conference, which features more than 200 speakers and participants from 26 countries, is coming to an end. We truly hope that you have had a fruitful experience of learning, sharing, and also networking. Before we listen to the closing speech by our beloved President, I shall announce the winners of the International Cultural Quiz. The winners will receive free PELTA membership for the year 2022. The top 3 winners are Muhammad Yoga Prabowo, IL, and Saira Banu Azad. Congratulations to the winners, and please email your particulars to peltapenang@gmail.com before midnight today, Malaysian time. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to invite the President of PELTA, Ms. Rovina Capel, to deliver her closing speech and officially close ALCON 2021.
Thank you to our MC, Ms. Rohaiza, distinguished guests, fellow Peltarians, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings from Penang, Malaysia, and a good day to everyone. On behalf of PELTA, I would like to record my thanks to many people today. We thank all our keynote speakers who gave inspiring presentations. Dr. Tomasz Kish, Mr. Alan Davenport, Dr. Jonathan Newton, and Dr. Gabriela Kleckova. Our thanks to all of you for making time for PELTA. You have made this conference even more vibrant with your virtual presence and invaluable input. I think the common thread with many of our speakers at this conference is for us all to look inwards and not outwards. We should reflect and start the change within ourselves to deal with the future skills we will need. Again, thank you to our keynote speakers. Our sincere thanks too to our invited and featured speakers who gave exceptional presentations. Ms. Lucille Das, our beloved founder member and the godmother of PELTA, Mr. Mike Mayer, Mr. Amin Negavati, Dr. Yvonne, Mr. Dera Estuarso, Mr. Samuel Isaiah, Ms. Miriam Puente, Assistant Professor Dr. Konvipa Punpon, and Dr. Wacharin Fongoy. Our appreciation and heartfelt gratitude to all presenters for your brilliant presentations throughout this conference. I wish to congratulate too those who were in the presenter showcase, Mr. Neil J. Anderson, Ms. Indrani Liu, Ms. Ramia Subramaniam, and Ms. Asha Devi Panaselvam. The excellent input and quality of intellectual discussions of all our presenters is a tribute to the conference participants. To those who have made personal sacrifices to be virtually with us over these 2 days, I applaud your dedication and commitment. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we do miss our PELTA godfather, Dr. Tony Wright, who has been with us from our first conference since 2003. Unfortunately, he was unable to join us at this conference, but he sends his best wishes to everyone. However, we do hope he will be able to join us again in future conferences. So, Tony, if you're listening, we've got our fingers crossed. Ladies and gentlemen, organizing ALTCON 2021 has been another milestone in the history of PELTA and a learning experience for us, as this was our first virtual conference. The success of this conference was the result of close cooperation between PELTA and a worldwide ELT community, sponsors, and well-wishers. Therefore, we would like to thank TESOL International Association USA for sponsoring Dr. Gabriela Kleckova. Pearson for sponsoring Mr. Mike Mayer, with special thanks to Ms. Su Chia for her support and encouragement. Cambridge University Press for their support. Ms. Indriani Liu for sponsoring some Malaysian presenters, and Thailand TESOL for their support. Our thanks to all who have helped in one way or another to make this conference a success. I believe that after this conference, we can continue to network and collaborate locally, nationally, and internationally to sustain and support each other in our continued professional development. I'm also very pleased to say that we had over 200 participants who joined us online throughout this conference. We were able to make connections, forge friendships, and have fun at the same time, albeit virtually. Ladies and gentlemen, the organizing committee worked in isolation from home and collaborated virtually to put this conference together. On behalf of PELTA, I apologize for any shortcomings that may have occurred during this conference, and I thank you for your patience and kind understanding. I would now like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank the members of the Conference Organizing Committee for their determination, their commitment, and their perseverance, without which it would not have been possible to have had this conference run so smoothly. I thank the tech support team, Ms. Lim Ji Yik, Ms. Shamini Munyendi, and Ms. Charu Manasi Santirakumar. They were responsible for the promotional montages, the program book, and the quiz. I thank Ms. Kaswini Munyendi, who was a moderator for some of our sessions. I thank our graphic design and tech support consultant, Mr. Abdul Jashir Jayasilan Abdullah, who designed the conference website, the conference poster, the program book, and created the official AltCon montage and the virtual backgrounds and slides for the opening and closing ceremonies. Thank you, Jashir. I thank Ms. Tebi Kim for the main messages and speeches she wrote. I thank Dr. Denise Kwa Siok Hun, who meticulously facilitated the coordination and background work for this conference. Thank you, Denise. I thank Ms. Kamle Kwan for the background work also and the handling of the conference accounts. I thank Ms. Rohaiza Abdul Ghani, our dear MC, for the opening and closing ceremonies. I thank Ms. Irene Teo and Ms. Lok Kun Ee, who helped with the reviews and the selection of the presenter showcase. I thank Ms. Wan Nur Asma Arshad, who was also a moderator for some of our sessions. I thank Ms. Leong Michelle, who also moderated some of our sessions and who was the coordinator of the moderators for this conference. I thank Ms. Shalini Subramaniam for the background work and the online work and her help with the program book. And finally, I thank Ms. Kwek Tian Wei, who was also a moderator for some of our sessions. Ladies and gentlemen, our 11th International Conference will be in 2023, and with the grace of God, we hope to meet all of you physically in Penang, where we can once again have a conference the Pelta way. Warm, friendly, and most importantly, face-to-face. Thank you for your participation at AltCon 2021 and for making this a truly memorable conference. With this, I hereby declare AltCon 2021 officially closed. Thank you.